All right. We're live, everybody. It's Always Bookin Comedy. It's Monday night. Got Kimbles Hume all the way from San Diego. How you doing, Kimbles?
Good. How you doing, Mark?
I'm fantastic. Kimbles is like a extraordinary show producer in the San Diego area, legendary even. Comics I talk to from all over the country know her. Super fun. Tell us about so I've done your show at that, what is it, Mission Bay Resort? Are you still doing that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's so funny that we're having this conversation now. So I've done 7 or 8 venues in San Diego, and definitely some have an amazing kind of prolificness to them. But no, I'm not doing that Mission Bay one anymore. It just got cancelled last month. Budget cuts for next year. Such a bummer. For 4 years, that show ran itself. It's one of those shows. Amazing. We were getting crowds of 100 people in.
You're wild. I've been losing so many venues recently. It's really difficult.
Yeah. It's tough. And it's one of my niches is hotels. So I really look for hotels because I love the fact that they're kind of, my sales point to them is that they're trying to keep people on site that are hotel guests, and they're trying to get people that aren't hotel guests into the hotel. So so that's something that I've always kind of used as a cool niche. But the problem is hotels have so many extra, expenses. They don't do things just the way we do. It's kind of, they want a full stage. They want a full AV team. They want a full bar with 2 bar staff. They have the banquet team that set up the room. I'm like, I can do that. I can do almost all of that, bar they're selling the alcohol that you need to do. But they want to do it the way hotels want to do it, so that's the only negative. And unfortunately that was expensive. So yeah, super bummed about that.
Oh, that's too bad. So in those 4 years, what do you think was the best show you had there?
Oh my gosh, the one with you on it, obviously.
Yeah, I was there twice. Trick question.
But you know what? We had some great shows there. And what's so fun about that is, another good thing about a hotel is you can offer people to stay the night. So my headliners, I had Gianmarco Ceresi from New York. So I used to really try and focus on whoever was coming over from New York to do LA for a weekend, or do the Irvine Improv or whatever for a weekend. I used to say, hey, I can actually tag you on down in this. If I was doing it for a while, it was on a Thursday night. So that always worked really well. So he was fantastic. And Jenny Zagrino did it a bunch.
Oh, I love Jenny. Jenny's the best.
And yeah, she was really good. And then I had Laurie Kilmartin do it once as well. And she was doing some really edgy material at the time. So I still remember her coming out and using the C word 26 times in the first 5 minutes, which is not quite the crowd. So that one will always go down as a memorable one as well.
Nice.
They also used to give me a bar tab. For the first 2 years, it was a free bar tab as much as we wanted for the comedians. So we had some fun nights on that. And then they realized we might push that a bit hard. So they gave me a $100 limit, but that's still not bad. Hotel prices, unfortunately. But
was there ever somebody you almost got that you were really excited about that didn't work out?
Was there ever someone I almost got?
Or who's somebody, maybe a more positive way of asking that would be, who are you excited? Who would be excited for you to get next year?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I liked about that venue, I've got some different venues, and for me, that venue was my, try to either get, if I was lucky, I'd be getting someone from New York, but I also really used it to give some of the best kind of local LA talent a night as well. So it was so nice to be able to get the, good LA headliners that never get an hour in LA. They have to go, touring to Timbuktu to pick up an hour wherever they want. So they were so appreciative to be able to come down and do an hour within the 2 hours of LA. So I kind of my last year, I really focused on that. But for me, it's my Belly Up show. That's really where I'm looking for the big artists.
Okay, let's talk about that. How did you get into the Belly Up in the first place?
So the Belly Up is my most local venue. It's just 20 minutes from me. So I was always just going there and enjoying the music. And then I think it was shows come from shows, doors close. And I think they actually, it was one of their GMs that saw my show at a place called L'Auberge in Del Mar, which is a really cool outdoor show, not too far from there. And they saw something and they wanted to do more comedy. Belly Up is traditionally a music venue. They wanted to start tapping into comedy. So they had some different ideas. They wanted to do it in the restaurant first. And I said, why? You've got a beautiful big stage. You do seated shows all the time as well. So let's try it in there as opposed to the restaurant, which I think would be a weirder vibe. And we gave it a go, and it was fantastic. I had Rachel Feinstein, Beth Stelling, Matthew Broussard, and some really cool people come through on that one. Liz Mealy.
What's the capacity there?
So it's for comedy, it's 400 seated. That was tough.
Yeah.
It's
What's the most you ever sold?
Plus. So the most I ever sold, Beth Stelling came in strong at about 330.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
The first time. And then the second
and do you
time,
run the ticketing, or do they like, I would think
they run it all. They run all
Ticketmaster.
the ticketing. So whenever I do as little as possible, Mark, that's what I shoot for all of these shows. I'm like, I'll bring me and the comics. And I have a really nice kind of branded backdrop as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I shoot for doing as little as possible. And in terms of the marketing, we kind of co-market it. But no, they handle all the marketing. Just went directly to their ticketing website.
Huh. Wow. 300 plus people.
I know.
Have you run other shows that are that big or bigger?
So yeah, my other one's about 300. So my other one, I have one at L'Auberge. And by the way, all the Belly Up ones aren't like that. We've had one night.
Oh
when
man,
there was
I went to a L'Auberge once.
Yeah, the L'Auberge
like the
one's
Napa area. It was so fancy.
Yes. Yeah. All the Belly Up shows aren't that big. So there's one Belly Up show where we only had about 56 people come. That was brutal. They it's a 400-person seated space, and they just put some big tables in the middle and tried to make it work. And it was still a fun show.
Oh, good.
But yeah, L'Auberge is beautiful. Really nice big hotel in Del Mar, and they've actually got this mini amphitheater built, or kind of quarter amphitheater built in, where they do like yoga and stuff during the day, goat yoga, whatever they do. And then yeah, we started doing comedy there outdoors in COVID. And that just took off. It's summer only, so it's 6 months of the year, and everyone says, why don't you do it all year? But it's just so magical. People look forward to it. And that easily gets between 200 and 300 is the first Friday of every month. And everyone just, again, we don't do much for that one. Everyone just brings their blankets or their lawn chairs. They bring their like fancy Tommy Bahamas, with their wine in their sippy cups. And yeah, they just all come and sit out, and there's chairs out there at 10 o'clock in the morning for an 8 p.m. show. It's so rad. And it's now been sponsored by the Village Association, the Del Mar Village Association, because they saw an uptick in commerce on the village on the night of the show. It's amazing. Cool. So they threw it our way too, which is great.
Who's somebody big that you've had there? Do you have as big people, or is it more showcase style?
No, so that one. So I really lean, whenever I do outdoor shows, I lean towards showcase style. And I found that that's a kind of a really cool trick for if people are going to listen to the same person for 45 minutes to an hour, they got to be comfy. They got to be not warm, not cold, not sitting on a cement block or a blanket, So for that outdoor show, I've always made it showcase, and I think it just helps. It's a PG-13 show as well, but it's kind of PG-13 plus pushing it. But I think that just for it being outdoor, there's a couple of nights that can get chilly, and it just helps keep people on their toes and think, I wonder who's next and what's coming up. So again, that's anyone who's in town for a Don't Tell, or people definitely drive down from LA because we get, I pay them a set fee, but we also get really good tips from that show. And I encourage tips. So we easily get like a tip pool of sometimes $500 to $600.
Why don't you talk through how you manage that? When do you talk about the tips? How do you collect the tips?
Yeah.
What have you learned over time about
So
that?
I've just started using this, working with this new company called Beppo, Bepo, and they help me manage it, which is awesome. So we used to just do the tip jar. Now a lot of people have cash that place, so we still have a big cash tip jar, but we also have big QR codes that we print out. It's printed out on my backdrop. It's also printed out on laminated sheets that I hand out. If the comics have been up and they killed and they're willing to hand out the laminated sheets, I always encourage that because people love it when it comes from them. But otherwise, it comes from good old me. And I normally do it just before I introduce the second to last or the last comedian in the showcase. So I'll say I'm handing these out. Please scan and pass on. And yeah, people can just scan and go straight through.
And when they
And leave a tip
scan, what
like
is
that.
it? Does it go to like a list of things like Venmo, Zelle, et cetera, or is it like a
Basic.
credit
Well, I
card?
mean, I used to use Venmo, but now I use this Beppo, which is the same thing basically. Yeah, they just you know it goes straight to their bank account, links up, and then they can Venmo straight in, and then they can leave a review as well,
Huh.
sign up to be added to the email list, and all that kind of stuff.
Huh. That's pretty cool. And when
So yeah,
when you're doing that collection, is any comedy going on, or do you pause the show?
no, we in that particular show, I do it during the last act.
Okay.
So yeah, that it's going around. So, but there's only kind of 10 sheets and there's 300 people there. So at
Right.
worst case, you've got 10 people not paying attention.
Yep.
And then we encourage people. There's a big one on the stage. A lot of people come up to the stage afterwards. That's where we sell merch as well.
Mhm.
Not my business bits merch, just any comedians that are selling their own merch.
Right.
So people kind of naturally gravitate up there. So you can scan up there as well.
Huh. Any challenges with that outdoor show? Anything that you've, like, changed to
Yeah, well,
make it more
we had one night
successful?
when the light didn't work. So literally it was black as night, outdoors, no light, and that's a lot of people to be in a very dark show. So that was problematic. But we stuck through on that one, and then we had one where when you're going up, you're like louder with the music, louder with the music, and then the AV guy was like, "You still want it louder?" I was like, "Yeah," and then he put it louder, and then blew the speaker straight away. I was like, guess that's on me.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah, he
man.
blew the speaker, and then it was awful. Oh, it was awful. We had to do the rest. It was a middle of the summer. I want to say it was the 4th of July weekend or whatever, and the mic just sounded awful.
Oh,
And we just had to plow through and do the best and apologize to people. But there's nothing you can do.
yeah.
The show must go on.
So how did you get into that venue? And Belly Up, it sounded like it was like an employee referral who came to one of your shows, which is great.
Yes. Yeah. Most of them were. How did I get into L'Auberge? L'Auberge was a friend of a friend, knows the GM. That was my first show, actually. So
Okay.
they knew, that was the very first show I got. They knew. Oh no, it wasn't. It was my second show. I remember. I forgot about that one. I did get a first show at a huge theater up in Escondido during COVID. It was super weird. It was a church on Sunday mornings, but it was a
Okay.
theater, and they wanted to try and do something different. It could be social distance because it was a 450 person theater.
Mhm.
So we had, every 3 rows you were allowed to go in, and they did a BYOB situation, which was nuts. I mean, I had Erica Rhodes headline a couple of times. I had a few other people come down, and literally these people would just come up with BYOB. The second show there, I had women vomiting in the front row that just didn't know what they were doing. Were clearly excited to be out of the house in the middle of COVID. It was completely wild. And at that point, I hadn't even thought about making the shows. Not all. I have one show that's PG-13. The rest are club style. But this was normal club style show, and in hindsight, definitely should have been a PG-13 vibe, knowing that it was a church Sunday morning, because they were not appreciative of the humor. I also really hadn't developed my brand there. So, Bits Comedy is my brand. And I think in general now, I know my audience, and I definitely book accordingly. I book comedians that aren't too edgy. I love edgy comedians. I'd listen to Jesselnick all day long if I could. I love the edgier the better in terms of what I like to listen to. But in terms of for bits, it doesn't have to be PG-13, but I tend to lean just for my brand away from political humor and away from anything too X-rated.
Right. How do you find new venues? Are you currently looking for new venues or no?
Yeah, I'm currently looking, and it's the same thing as being a comic. I'm just trying to be better at being shameless. And that's what it's all about, right? Like, it's hard enough getting booked as a comic, and it's hard trying to get new venues. But every time, whenever you do podcasts like this, I was featured in a local magazine the other day, and I was like, hey, anyone that knows someone with a venue, hit me up. Let's get that going. And then the company I work with for tips, Beppo, they're really good. They work with hotels for getting tips for valets and things like that. So they're a nice relationship with other hotels that they work with. And then I'm meeting with a guy who owns a big yachting company soon. So that could be interesting. Comedy on a boat. I don't know. I've seen weirder.
Do you ever get audience members who are like, hey, can you do my Christmas party or some kind of private event?
Yeah, I've had a couple of that. I picked up some golf clubs that way as well. A couple of managers of golf clubs. I did do a couple of 50th birthday parties. Yeah. The good thing is they're like corporate. They're like corporate to me. I mean, they're not, but you can charge a good price for them. You make a bit of money, but they're weird. I mean, you know, especially for me.
Where are those held? Are they like at the person's house, or do
Yeah,
they rent out a
the two
restaurant?
I've done have been at the person's house. Yeah, all of my shows are at swanky venues, so they all have a bunch of rich people that show up that have beautiful houses. One of them covered the pool and put all the chairs on the pool, so that was super cool. And
did they take care of all the AV stuff?
And they took care. That's the only. I was about to say, you do such a good job of all the AV stuff. That is not my specialty.
Right.
So whenever I work with people, I make sure that they're on the case with the AV. To the point that I've probably missed a few gigs. What I want to do is find someone in San Diego who's like an AV specialist to make sure that when someone says to me next time, can you do the show? That I can say yes and just bring in my AV guy. I just don't have that right now.
I got a guy for you.
Want an AV guy or girl?
I got a guy for you. After this, we'll talk.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
I got the guy.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, when you book for those shows, do they make specific requests? Are they like, oh, we were at the JB Ball show and we love JB, or we want darker comedy, or we want cleaner comedy, or
they do, and I can never accommodate it, which is a nightmare. But they do. I think what I found is whenever people want an ad hoc show, they always want it to be all about them. Right. So that's can you make special jokes about this, about that? To which I always say no. But I have realized that the more you can get a crowd work specialist on those shows, the better. So I really lean into, for anything that's more ad hoc or specific, corporate or not, for an individual's birthday, I'll always lean into a crowd work headliner.
And name a couple people who've been good for you, or
off the top of my head, I always have to pull my list up. I can't remember their names. David, I use JF Harris is great. David Rosenthal. We've got a bunch of guys in San Diego who work. So I'll just pull into the Trenton Davis. There's a bunch of really good.
Who's the guy who just moved to New York out of
San Diego? Zoltan?
Yeah. Have you worked with him?
Oh, absolutely. I booked him a bunch. He was San Diego's finest. Him and Dustin Nickerson, who's killing it as well. But yeah, Zoltan was next level professional, and just so funny, just all the time, just a prolific writer. And every time we saw him, when you're just doing a silly, 5 years ago when I first started, you're doing a silly show and you just want to get out of there as quick as possible. You would stay to watch Zoltan do anything and everything because he was just brilliant.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That's the neat thing I think about show running is when you book somebody and they, I wouldn't say his old hand's famous now, but he's harder to book now than he was 2 years
Oh,
ago.
for sure. Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
like, that's
yeah.
kind of
Oh,
fun. It's like, "Oh, I worked with that
yeah.
person." Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah, for
cool. It's
sure.
like a feather in your cap.
He's going places. Yeah,
So
agreed.
you mentioned briefly a list. Tell me how you manage booking all these comics and how you if somebody's like, "Oh, I need somebody to make fun of my Italian grandmother." Like, how would you track
Yes.
down somebody who would be good for that? Is it all in your
I
brain? Is it written into a spreadsheet?
I wish I had good notes. I've got a spreadsheet and I go down, I've got a few notes in those spreadsheets, but really at that point it's just names.
Mhm.
Honestly, the weirdest, I use my Instagram. So I go straight onto my Instagram, I'll look at Bits Comedy, and then I'll scroll through looking at the photos and I'll be like, oh yeah, they'd be great and they'd be great.
Nice.
I guess I'm much more visual than
So past lineups is
yes,
your yeah.
exactly. So I'll
Well, and
literally
that's
when I
good that
meet
you
someone,
have years of history because that'd be
exactly.
hard in the beginning to do that.
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's the easiest way for it's just how my brain works in terms of looking down. I do have the spreadsheet. I just so rarely go in
Yeah.
and use it.
How is it that, that your Instagram is a visual history of your lineups? Like, tell me, how do you promote shows and how do you, document shows in
Yeah.
your
So
Instagram?
on every post of I do a pre-promotion of every show, although that's dwindled a little recently. But after every show, I'll make sure I get a good photo of everyone on stage at the show, and then whenever I can, I'll get a group photo too.
'Kay.
And then post every show because I want to, number one of the main objectives for comedians is to get people to follow them on their socials, right? So I always make a point during the show to say, please follow Bits Comedy, and then I will show all the comedians that have been on stage tonight. And you can, follow your favorites. So I'll do a little kind of story showing a little bit of each of the comedians, and they can just go along and follow accordingly.
Nice.
So yeah,
This is such a dumb question, but stories are the things that go away in 24 hours, right?
yes, but I'll
So
do a
how do
story
you
and a
can you
post.
see your story history? Like, is that how it works? You can still see the history?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'll do a story and a post from every
Okay.
show. So I'll
Okay.
just look through the posts. But yeah, I've also got story highlights for each of my shows.
And
So
that
when you have
persists.
highlights on your Instagrams, I've got a belly up highlight reel, a low burge highlight reel, and so on. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. And so those are videos? How do you assemble those?
And they're stories. So basically, stories disappear in 24 hours unless you add them into the highlight reel.
Got it.
So
Okay.
I go into the highlight reel and I edit it, and then I add those stories, and then essentially it becomes like a whole storybook
Okay.
of that venue.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Neat. Do you do much like, do you have customers that bounce around your different venues because of you?
Yes, and I think that's why I've tried to get better at really understanding my brand and what I want it to be. Because for a while I was doing this low burst show, which was PG-13, and at this beautiful venue, and then I was doing this other show down in Mission Beach, and it was just a very different style. And I had a couple of them in a couple of these big groups of ladies that were fantastic, and they came down, and it just wasn't what they were expecting. For me, I thought I wanted to be everything for everyone in terms of comedians. So I was like, I want to hire the big comedians from LA for my low burst show, but I also want to give something to the local comedians, the local more up and coming comedians, not even the top level, like the ones that are just doing well in open mics and trying to get booked on shows. I was like, this could be my kind of entry level. The problem with that is it's not fair for either group. It's not fair for your audience because they've come to expect top tier comedy, and it's not fair for your up and coming comedians because that's not what the audience is expecting to see.
Mm.
So the audience is like, wait, I just saw JB Ball or Orion Levine or whoever it is, and now I've got this guy who's been doing comedy for a year and has got a lot of potential, but just isn't there yet.
Mhm.
So It's interesting. I liked this idea of trying to be everything for everyone at first. And now I've just realized for me, in terms of the business, I just really want to hone bits in on being a certain style and level of comedy. And I'm okay with that. You know, it's middle-aged parent relationship type comedy. And that's, you know, I'm not a don't tell, I'm not young and hip, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, or the shows aren't always that, and that's okay.
We got a question from the internet from North Carolina here. What
Yeah.
is the biggest opportunity comedians on social media are missing?
Ooh, what are the biggest opportunity comedians on social media are missing? I mean, for me, it's continued messaging me. If you message, if you so if you message me saying you want to be on the show, and I choose to ignore it, that's my prerogative. Don't feel like you can't message me again or message me again. Half the time, yes, I look down Instagram to say who was on my last show a year ago that I want to book. So often I get a cancellation and I'm thinking, who shall I book? I happen to get a pop-up from Paul who says, hey, I'm available this weekend if you've got any spots. I'm like, can you fill in as a feature tonight? And then he's in.
Yeah.
Front of mind is absolutely a thing. So for
Yeah.
me, the biggest opportunity, you want to be all over the constant posting and things, but just be relentless. Just be polite. Be polite and relentless in your pursuance. Is that a word? In your pursuance
Pursuit.
of showrunners. Your pursuit of showrunners.
Yeah.
As long as you're polite, I don't care how relentless you are. But what annoys me is when people drop off a cliff in terms of the politeness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great advice. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your comedy. We're wrapping up here. Any fun road trips this past year, travel, adventures, anything you're looking forward to next year in terms of you performing?
Yeah, had some really fun trips this year. Loved the week up in Denver with you. So fun, or Colorado. Especially for me, I'm super sporty, so I was mountain biking and paddle boarding, and it's
I
just
love that, by the way.
the love of bringing the two things together is just amazing. And then I've had a lot of Vegas trips, which have been fun. And it's a couple of San Fran. And then I went over to Minneapolis, which was my first time West Coast as well,
Cool.
opening for my friend Rudy Parvich, who was shooting his special over there.
What,
So that
was it at a club?
Yes, that was at a club. Don't ask me the name of it. I know you're going
Acme,
to.
maybe?
My brain doesn't work like
Down in
that.
the basement?
No, it was a
No.
smaller club.
Okay.
Comedy
The Comedy Underground or something
Comedy
underground?
Underground.
Yeah,
Comedy
yeah.
Underground or Comedy
Yeah,
Corner.
yeah.
Something
It's
like
like a
that. Yes.
corner
Yes.
stage.
Yeah.
with
A little red
posters all
one.
over it.
Yeah.
Super cool room. That's fun.
Super cool. So fun. Met some great people there. So that was a really fun weekend.
Nice.
And all of Rudy's family were in town, and I was staying with Rudy, so I just got to hang out with his family and enjoy that as well. So check out Rudy Parvich. His special's coming out soon.
Nice. How many
I've got
cameras did they have? Because it's kind of a small space. Did they use the club's cameras, or did they bring in their own equipment?
Good question. I have no idea. They had a lot of cameras. I want to say he had a decent amount of cameras there, but I think he was shooting it, but it was mostly going to be audio, I think, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, it was a really cool little room. And then I've got some fun stuff coming up. I'm in Vegas. I'm at the Comedy Store in La Jolla tomorrow night and the night after. Then I'm in Vegas the end of this week.
What do you do in Vegas?
So Heather Pasternak, who's amazing, has a residency at Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club. So I'm with her on the Thursday, and then I think I managed to get a guestie with Jessime Peluso on the Friday night too. So Vegas, and then a few other bits coming up. I've got a show with Adam Carolla January 19th here in San Diego, which is great. And then I don't know. I haven't thought much ahead of January.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you're very busy. That's exciting.
Yeah, gotta be.
What do you have any goals for next year?
I've definitely got to find myself a new venue. Now that Mission Bay one's gone, it was my favorite venue. It was also made me some money. That was what allowed me what allowed me to travel, really. Because as you know, when we travel, we're not making much. If I'm breaking even on a good trip,
Yeah.
That's fine for me right now.
Yeah.
And
Especially if you're flying.
yes, especially
It's so hard. And if you're renting
sure.
a car on top of that, it's
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have to make really good money to
yeah,
recoup
for
that
sure.
stuff. You really got to make it a vacation.
Yeah, and that's what this was enabling me to do this on a monthly basis. I was really
Yeah.
trying to get one good trip a month,
Mhm.
and that Mission Bay show was what it was allowing me to do that, because the L'Auberge one is just in the summer, and the Belly Up one is a bit more ad hoc.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, I just want to find a monthly one that can it doesn't have to make me much, just makes me $200 to $300 a month, just for a
Yeah.
little bit of money to keep me traveling.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. That's the January goal. New
Nice.
couple of new venues, because you got to kiss a bunch of
I,
frogs.
yeah, I always say it's like swimming. You have to constantly be paddling because you're
Yes.
going to lose venues. I
Yeah.
run like maybe 3 to 8 shows a month, and I'm probably losing a venue every single month.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
to
Picking
add
up great ones.
1 to 3 venues every month just to stay afloat.
Yeah. For
Uh,
sure. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had a
Yeah. That's
real
what I do.
challenge with January, actually, specifically where I had a
Oh.
venue cancel on me. I didn't lose the venue, but just that specific date they couldn't do, and I have it has been a real nightmare trying to replace
The
that
venue,
venue on
because you've
short.
got the headliner in town for
Oh,
multiple
yeah, they're
days.
flying in from New York City. It's a
Yeah.
Comedy Cellar guy. It's a 5-night run.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, he stays in his hotel room and I just pay him. But that's
Right.
a terrible scenario.
That's a
Nobody wants
terrible
I don't
scenario.
want that.
Yeah.
He doesn't want that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah. That's rough.
anyways. All right,
Oh,
we
well,
gotta wrap this down. We got a nice thank you from the internet. Thank you, Mark in North Carolina. And,
pleasure.
Kimbles, you're the best. Stick around for a second. Everybody tune in next Monday. We're back. Always Booking Comedy. We'll see you next time.